What up, YouTube? It's your boy Trey. We're back at it with another episode of Trey Actions. And today we've got another continuation to our American in Spain series. And today I'm going to be reacting to, or Trey acting to, I haven't said those words in a minute, Trey acting to 25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. Uh, yeah, I really enjoyed this series the last time I did it. I didn't get a lot of views, but you know what? I want to keep doing it just because I think it can be fun, I think you just got to keep going until you hit something, right? So hopefully y'all taking in the content, you're all enjoying the content, and without further ado, man, let us go. Let's see what the misconceptions the world has about America. What misconceptions the world have about America? Let go.
The United States often draws a lot of flack from the rest of the world for everything. From its foreign policy to the way it runs its domestic affairs. In fact, it seems like there are few things that can divide the world more evenly and more strongly than asking people what their opinion is of the United States. Everyone has an opinion.
I know, it's true. And there's no cap.
Even in the same city, you'll meet people who fall on the extreme sides of the spectrum. But what is it exactly that causes America to be so messed up? Even America's own politicians can't seem to stop talking about how messed up things are. Well, today we're going to take a deeper look. Are things really as bad as everyone seems to think they are? I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. And as a very important note, this list was produced by both a United States citizen and two European citizens that relocated to the United States. It's written to be as fair as possible.
Let's see. Hey man, I'm here for it. I absolutely am here for it. Yeah. Let's see what they got.
No, I'm not two Europeans. Or am I?
No, you're not.
Alright, let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. But let's be honest, they never studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same continent. It turns out that all of us are pretty bad at geography.
This is true. This is so true. I get so much flack for being American. People always almost do not expect me to know where a place is. Especially here in Europe. And I never understand it. Because you would think that if you ask some Europeans to tell you about Bulgaria, I mean, how many people even know the capital of Bulgaria? Like know anything about Bulgaria? How many people know about Sofia? How many people know about all these places? I mean, that's just a stupid example, but sometimes it can seem as though Americans are super ignorant about these things. It's like, but geography is one of those things that a lot of the world is ignorant about. You know about your side of things, you know about your country, and Americans kind of got to know about their states and their entire country. That shit is huge. But I think that this is a fair one. Geography, it's not. Americans know the United States of America very well, which is a pretty huge landmass. I'm not gonna criticize Europeans on not knowing the rest. I don't know where things are, but I'm just sorry. I'm saying.
You'd think America would be better at it, however, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone. And that's true. But who doesn't? Germany, France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy on each other and ourselves. Moving on, America has been called racist. Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists, and it makes the news. But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world watches it, sometimes more than their own media. So when something super bad happens in other countries, it might not even make the back page. Next,
I gotta co-sign that one, man. Some of you, the European audience, will probably hate this commentary, but I do not care. It's true that there's racism in the United States of America. That is a truth. We can't even sit here and try to compare it. But I hate when Europeans try to act as though it doesn't exist here. I'll tell you a quick story, man. My first year in Spain, I went through hell. And when I would try to talk to some of my Spanish compañeros, my colleagues or whatever about it, everyone just like downplayed it as, oh, it's just classism, Trey. It's not, oh, don't, it's just classism. What the fuck did I do to be of a lower class? People do not want to admit that the problem has everything to do with race as well. Always people will tell me, oh, well, the difference between a black person and a white person is the amount of money that they have. I got bullshit still. I'm sorry. I'm not. I've been here long enough to know that that's foolishness. It's just people not wanting to take responsibility and accountability for it. I'm not saying that that's everyone. I'm not saying that's the majority of it, but there are excuses made for racism in Europe that I've just never seen anywhere else, or why it's not there. And I would agree with this man what he just said about having that vicious media. Right, our media can be quite vicious, uh, in the sense that hate sells, and we're gonna put a microscope on everything that we possibly can to, like, inflict, like, to blow it up even more out of proportion than it is, right? It's why I do not subscribe to American media. I saw this. I have seen liberal media literally race bait. I have watched it happen, especially in the summer of 2020. I watched that whole race baiting thing going. It's like we kept it going. So it's quite vicious. And it's what the whole world sees. The difference is that there's a camera to our shit. There's no camera to your shit here in Europe. And that's just being real. That's me being, as someone who's been living here since 2018, on and off until I was here permanently. Um, this is something that I just, every time a European brings up racism to me, I don't even want to fucking hear it, because it's like you have a target, which is America, but you don't even look at your own selves. To the point where I literally was in a relationship with a woman who was practically fucking racist, literally talking smack about me on text messages to her friends, saying things like, you're only supposed to date them, you're not supposed to actually marry them, or become serious in a serious relationship with them. Having questions asked like, are you sure you would ever consider having black babies? What is it like being in a relationship with a black guy? Are they really violent? These are the things that my ex used to entertain conversations, and I would find this out. So again, out of everything that transpired in the relationship, this was a point of no return for me. I just couldn't go back from this. And again, as these subtle racism, like, again, to them, there's no issue there. But I saw an issue with my partner having conversations with others about my race in a very derogatory way and all that. What part of that is fucking classism? Sorry. Sorry for my rants, my little tangents I just went on here, but let's keep going.
It's a common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. While it's true that we use cars a lot, many regions in America have great public transport, or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it? We're looking at you, UK.
Ha! I'm sorry. That was a little jab. They threw a little jab at the UK. But yes, I mean, public transportation is not a big thing in the United States. It's true. You go to places like New York City, you'll have that. You go to San Francisco, you do have that. California tries, but our public transportation is not as good as that in Europe. So I'm not gonna say they're equal here. No, they're not. And when you have a good one, like when I lived in Washington D.C., for example, I thought they had one. I personally think they have the best metro system in the entire United States. But then again, how many people know about it? How many people actually use that metro to go back and forth to work? Because again, the oil companies the oil companies have done a great job of making sure that we do not uh, have good, safe public transportation. That's how you keep Americans buying cars and stuff. But I think that with the way the world is moving, I think Americans are probably going to start standing up against that and realizing, like, hey, we do need some kind of public transportation. We do need public transportation we can feel safe on, things like that. So there you go.
Moving on. America does/has/is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks. Some states have the death penalty, some don't. Some have strict gun laws, and some don't. Some have free college, some don't. Some have tax, and yeah, some don't. So just like you can't say Europe is so and so, you can't say the same about the US.
Facts.
As an additional note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard.
Yep.
Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are.
Little bit, hey, if you didn't understand what this man just said, he just broke that down. States' rights are a big thing in the United States, right? It is a big thing. Literally, if a state truly feels strongly about something, they can go against. Federal law. Yes, federal law allows you to be able to own, for example, own weapons, right? You're given that right under the Constitution, but states can put further restrictions on how strict they want to be about you obtaining that weapon, right? You can go to states like the Southeast out in the Bible Belt, right? If you go down to the Bible Belt, what you will find when I say the Bible Belt, I'm talking about the southern states of the United States, from Texas up to Arkansas, Mississippi, and all the way out east, right? North Carolina down all the way down to Florida. That's my people's Georgia. Hey yo. Um, that's what in that in this area, guns are pretty much life. We've got guns, football, and the Bible, or guns, football, Jesus. There's something more nasty I could say, but I ain't gonna say it on here. But yeah, that's just how it is. The states have their rights also. Yes, you're right. It doesn't go above it doesn't go above federal law, but also there are states that have been giving the power to modify some of those federal laws in order to fit their states. And he was actually correct when he said each state has its own military, which is true. It's called the National Guard. Each state has a military that answers to the governor of the state as well. Again, the big thing here is just to remember that the United States of America is a big ass country. That thing is huge. About as big as it's about as big as damn Europe in its own, in its entirety. So I mean, always look at it in that sense. It's very easy to say Americans this, Americans this, Americans this, Americans that, but we're not a monolith, man. We are one people. Yeah, it's true, but we're not a monolith. The way I as a person from the South, I'm from Atlanta, by way of Georgia, right? Ha, why'd I say from Atlanta by way of Georgia? No, I am from Atlanta, Georgia. That's home for me. But um, someone from North Carolina, for example, will be completely different from me, because that's two states above mine, and they have their own kind of culture there. And by the time I get to California, by the time I get to South Dakota, Minnesota, it's like culture shock for me because these are not things I'm used to.
To further establish the fact that America isn't a single entity, many believe that Americans only speak one language. But that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France? Or the UK? Or Italy? Or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country. There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note,
and that's true. On some notes, the world expects the United States of America to be the world's police. But as soon as the United States of America becomes the world's police, it becomes like, you do too much. One of the things I always say is that look to your own government, look to your government's interests. Many Europeans that have not many, some Europeans I've come across since living in Europe didn't think that their nations served in Iraq or Afghanistan. Whoo, newsflash, baby. Y'all need to go back and look at what your military's doing. Yeah, you're right. Maybe maybe your country only sent 200 people. Maybe your country only provided financial support with the tax dollars that you pay. there's so many nuances to these things, man. And I take personal pride in this because I too served my country. So yeah.
Americans are fat. You ever been to the UK? Wait. There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery. Yes, America does have an obesity problem. But not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything.
It's true. Listen, we're fat food central. All right, there's no comparing. It's a big ass country, so when we look at the percentages, it's gonna be bastante. No, a lot, too much, demasiado.
There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages.
Yes.
In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian.
Please repeat that.
Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages. In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same. The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively.
I want to slam my head. This man. Ooh, I feel like I'm listening to a hip hop track, and this man's just dropping bars. But again, I think I said it before. Haters themselves, man. To be a hater, it's. I'm not saying that people are just hating on the U.S., but again, this thing goes back and forth everywhere, and it's just again goes back to it. There's entirely too many nuances behind behind a lot of these stereotypes, right? A lot of nuances because again, how the country is. But yeah.
And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe. This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually come here. By this same logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well. Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired. In fact, most Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans. All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in the life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom!
Guns, fast food, and freedom. Yeah. I will say this: guns are huge in the country. There are more guns than there are people in the United States of America. That is a fact. No one can argue that. All right, it's true. It's something that I personally, have my thoughts around, and it's not for this video, uh, but I will agree with what this man had to say. Even and I really want to highlight this because of where I grew up. I grew up in the deep south, right? And like Dallas, Georgia. That Dallas, Georgia is home, man. That's exactly where I grew up at. And you would think that this is a place where I just hear gunshots all the time. Just because, freedom. People just got their ranch and everything. But no, not people go to the range and stuff like that. So when people hear gunshots just out in the open, everyone is concerned, and this has been this way since I was a kid. And but yeah, uh, now when we talk about the crime rates, I'm not I'm not well studied on that on what the crime statistics are between both places. Again, I always say look at those nuances. I live in Europe, in Spain, because of the peace it affords me, and that is we can have a whole I'll actually make a whole video about that later on why I decided to move to Spain and stole my role. Oh, tier. Sorry. But no, let go.
What I'm saying is a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question. Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country. Us Americans are definitely patriotic, but so is the rest of the world, as they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from. But
That I agree with that so much because again, it's something that I do see here, especially in Spain, when I feel bad just seeing somebody wearing a flag wristband, and it's just like, oh, fucking franquistas, oh, fucking fascists, and it's like sometimes people just have national pride, and yes, I know the difference between a franquista flag and the flag of the republic. All right, I know the difference. I can spot it from a mile away. I literally live in a neighborhood with a bunch of franquistas here who still fly their fucking banderas high, but that's not something that, listen, just because the neo Nazis choose to abuse the flag that of my nation doesn't mean I still don't have pride in that flag, right? Again, I think I just mentioned it a few minutes ago. I serve this country, so I do take pride in that. And again, we can go through it again. There are all a bunch of intricacies and nuances that go with this.
that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample.
That I disagree with. I really do disagree with that because of the facts that a lot of the people that you see traveling throughout, you have the tourists, right? Those that have probably the first time out of the country. I do make a differentiation between travelers and tourists. And you're right, it's true. There's ignorance, and there are a lot of ignorant tourists out there, especially Americans. Oh my fucking goodness, yes, we are. We can be, but there are also a lot of us who are not like this. A lot of us are travelers. A lot of us like to absorb and become part of the culture we live in, and we just don't think that America is everything and everything that the world isn't. So we understand that the United States of America has its place in the world, and just like every other nation, has its place in the world, and that's okay.
But in their defense, many times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right? No? Okay, fine. Back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative, by our European representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the US is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account: reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another. That's
I've never even really actually thought about it in that sense, but Kenneth, I thought it has reason. Yeah, it makes sense.
still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life.
Facts.
Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning. This list sounds great coming from an American.
Damn. I'm gonna cover that. I'm not trying to be choked. I ain't trying to get jumped out here in Madrid. Oof. But there is truth to that.
Probably the one who should have read this one, but I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer. Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer. Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer.
That's because the word we didn't invent the For goodness sakes, stop telling Americans that we came up with the word soccer. We didn't come up with it. There's a whole good old history about where the term soccer comes from. Actually, it came from the UK. I want to say it was one of those prestigious universities, either Oxford or Cambridge, one of those two. It's soccer was like the association. It was the association of something. I forget something, and out of that, they got the sock out of it, and then and it became soccer. And by the time that it makes its way into universities in the Americas, especially in the United States, it has become soccer. That association of football or whatever. I don't know the right term behind it right now, but that's where the term soccer comes from. It's not an American term. Hmm.
Oh, what do I mean by still? I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer. The word soccer is an abbreviation of association and first appeared in universities in the
I'm not as stupid as y'all think I am.
1880s, sometimes using the variant spelled soccer with a K. The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been
I'm not as dumb as y'all think.
fond of shortened forms such as breakers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't they just leave the window open? Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heatwave, 70,000 people died. This was in large part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning. While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures, especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible. Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter, absolutely, open windows. Moving into the top 9, that's the weird number. Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United
It's true about that aircon thing, though. Y'all know it's true. Don't play.
States of accounting for 25 nice percent of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25 nice percent of the world's economic activity. The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English. Actually, both British English and American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English. Dang. For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English.
I didn't know that. I never even thought about it in that sense. That's pretty cool to know.
On a totally different note, did you know that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true. The fact is that in America, you have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the U.S. and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the U.S., you can, but you don't have to. Now, this next one is just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks.
Ha!
While there are certainly Americans who fit this stereotype, the vast majority don't. Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from Europeans in any significant way.
Man, why'd they use this man's photo like that, man? Why'd they use that man's photo? Why? Whoa, that's wrong. I don't know what that is, by the way, but it is. I don't know, man. You just want to say redneck. Just put a man in a Carhartt t-shirt, cowboy hat, and damn Wrangler jeans, and walk around like, yeah, Lego.
Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland. Fair warning, the last five on our list get a bit dark and crazy, starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China. This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more. Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed. Alright, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true. Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever see carrying guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland than you ever would in America. Okay, we admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right-wingers, most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays. This next one sounds like a legit stand-up joke.
Religion is quite big in the Americas. Well, in the United States of America, to be specific, religion is super big. Just the way that we are as a people. The country was founded on religion and slavery. Damn near, it seems like sometimes. So, it does exist, but he is right. As much that overly loud minority, right? That show that minority right wingers will show up and they're just like, oh, everything is guns, Jesus, Christian, guns, Jesus, Bible, whatever they say. Um, but I tell you what, man, if you there are great Christians out there. Even some of these right wing nut jobs, like I see said, are great. One of the things that I always said, there's a story that I will never forget. This man, oh, Mr. Hateful, blah, blah, blah. I hate Mexicans, blah, 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 blah. This man saved this Mexican woman. We're across the border, but she was injured and she had she had was like dying. And he found her in the morning, like dying. She had like broken her leg and she was bleeding badly. She tried to tourniquet her leg and all that stuff, but she was gone. He took her in, her and her children. And fostered them. This is a man who was all about like, I don't want them damn Mexicans in the country, blah 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 blah. And it's the same thing. You see these people who yap 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 yap. That bark for the most part is as bigger than it's harder than their bites. But it's the truth, man. These people all talk for the most part. They're not trying to hurt you or anything like that for the most part. They'll talk all the crazy in the world. But at the end of the day, many of them remember that we do have laws.
If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America.
Not true.
As with most things that concern America, they're wrong.
It's just really expensive. That's it. You're gonna get taken care of, but you're gonna have $100,000 bill, a $250,000 bill for the rest of your life that you're slowly paying down. But that's such a misconception that if you are struggling to breathe and you're dying because you don't have health insurance, you're gonna die. That's wrong to say. That's not right at all. And that doesn't happen at all. You're gonna get seen. You're gonna be taken care of as it is an emergency. I must make that distinction. As long as it is an emergency, you're going to get seen for the most part, unless some doctors, some EMTs are just breaking the law, like the ones who just kicks that man out of their ambulance back in January. Oh, sorry. Was it January? Was it December? Right before? Yeah, it was in December. Uh, I believe 2 days before Christmas, or was it Christmas Eve or whatnot? He called. He couldn't breathe, and he was being too grabby because obviously this man cannot breathe. And this is what you do. If you've ever been out of breath, you know how grabby you can be. Well, the EMTs called the cops and kicked this man. He's literally trying to grab the oxygen thing. They kicked him out of the EMT, out of the ambulance. By the way, EMT, for those of you who do not understand, EMTs, emergency medical technicians, right? Your ambulance people. So they kicked this man out of the ambulance. They called the police to come in and make sure this man got out of their ambulance. Within a couple of minutes of this man being out of the ambulance, he drops and he dies right there. And then it takes them another fucking 5 minutes to check on this man. They all sit there and watch as this man is laying there thinking he's being dramatic. I'm so happy to see all the pain that is coming your way now because that was so wrong. No, we do not allow people to die on the streets. That's a misconception that does bother me a lot because we don't do that. We're not that fucking evil, man. Yes, will it be expensive? Absolutely. Will you like be paying for this for the rest of your life? Absolutely. There are people with millions of dollars in bills because they just can't afford it. They pay as slowly as they possibly can.
You can't be denied emergency medical care in the US. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath.
Correct.
The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later. Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now. Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans.
Oh, shit.
The average household debt in the US, OECD, is 113% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%.
Holy shit.
In Sweden, 173.
Holy shit.
And in Denmark, it's a whopping 305%.
Holy shit.
So, what are some misconceptions about the US that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to put a stereotype to rest? Let us know in the comments below, or tweet your answer to us at List25. And as an American, I apologize for everything going on right now. Don't worry, 2020 is just around the corner.
Oh.
Oh, this video is old. Huh. He said 2020 is right around the corner. If only he knew. Oh, man. I enjoyed that actually. I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of hate coming my way regardless, man, but it is what it is. It was a good one. I appreciated all these misconceptions. I hope y'all all watched it. I hope you enjoyed them. If you have any critique for me, let me know. Like, share, comments, please comments. Let me know how much I suck. Let me know how much this was BS to you. Like, let me know how horrible the US truly is. It is what it is. I get it. Hey, don't take these things. Please don't take these videos too seriously. Okay, it's just discourse, and it's something that is dead, and I don't want it to die. I want discourse to be around. I want us to talk. This is how we get misconceptions like this, right? About you should. I want to actually react to how America, like 25 misconceptions that Americans have of Europeans, just so you can see how these go. Again, it comes down to discourse, and we don't talk a lot, and it's so easy to attack. Attacking is easy. Bam, got you. But having a conversation is better if you get to know about one another. And again, y'all know how I am. I'm all about the love and positivity. So please, keep it coming. Please keep sending the videos, and your boy's going to keep reacting to them. I love y'all as always, and thank you for joining me for another session reacting on Trey Actions. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, peace.